Dr. Shade is a relationship expert known for discussing emotional health, toxic behavior patterns, and personal growth in modern relationships. Hey everyone, welcome back. Today, we're talking about something extremely important that a lot of people ignore in relationships until it's too late: toxic behavior. Now, let me make one thing clear before we begin. Nobody is perfect. Every person has flaws, insecurities, emotional triggers, and bad habits. But there's a major difference between normal mistakes and consistent toxic behavior that slowly destroys your peace, confidence, and emotional well-being. A lot of people get trapped in unhealthy relationships because the warning signs don't always appear immediately. Toxic people can seem caring, attractive, charming, supportive, and emotionally invested at first. But as time passes, the manipulation, insecurity, jealousy, and unhealthy habits begin to show. So, in today's script, we're going over 6 major warning signs that can help you recognize toxic behavior early before it seriously affects your mental and emotional health. Let's get right into it. 1. They always play the victim. The first major warning sign is someone who constantly plays the victim. Now, listen carefully, because this is one of the easiest ways to identify a toxic person. Whenever something goes wrong, it's never their fault. If there's an argument, they blame you. If there's a misunderstanding, they blame circumstances. If they hurt your feelings, somehow you still end up apologizing. They avoid accountability at all costs. And honestly, this becomes emotionally exhausting over time. Healthy relationships require 2 mature people who can communicate honestly and admit when they're wrong. Nobody is perfect, but emotionally healthy people are willing to say, "Yeah, I messed up. I shouldn't have done that. I understand why you're upset." Toxic people struggle with this. Instead, they twist situations to make themselves look innocent while making everyone else appear guilty. Eventually, you start feeling emotionally drained because you're constantly defending yourself or apologizing for things you didn't even do. Now, obviously, there are situations where someone genuinely is the victim. Life happens. People get hurt. But there's a huge difference between someone experiencing real pain and someone who constantly needs sympathy, attention, and pity while refusing to take responsibility for their own actions. And here's the dangerous part. Over time, people like this can manipulate your emotions so well that you start questioning yourself. You begin thinking, maybe I really am the problem. Maybe I'm overreacting. Makin sante and no, I no. Maybe this is my fault. That emotional confusion is exactly what makes toxic relationships so damaging. 2. They play mind games. The second warning sign is emotional games. And honestly, this is something you can usually notice very early. If someone genuinely likes you and wants a healthy relationship, they communicate clearly. But toxic individuals often create confusion intentionally. One day they're extremely affectionate. The next day, they're cold and distant. They ignore messages on purpose. They test your loyalty unnecessarily. They try to make you jealous. They give mixed signals. And instead of communicating like an emotionally mature adult, they create emotional chaos. Now, why do people do this? A lot of times it comes from insecurity. Some people feel powerful when they control someone else's emotions. Others are emotionally immature and don't know how to communicate properly. And yes, sometimes toxic behavior comes from trauma, abandonment issues, or painful past experiences. But here's something extremely important you need to understand. Someone's trauma may explain their behavior, but it does not excuse harmful behavior. It is not your responsibility to stay in a toxic situation hoping you can heal or fix another person. Real change only happens when the individual recognizes their behavior and decides to work on themselves. A healthy relationship should bring peace and emotional security. If someone constantly leaves you confused, anxious, emotionally drained, or mentally exhausted, that is not love. That is emotional instability. 3. Your success becomes competition. The third warning sign is when your achievements become competition. In healthy relationships, partners support each other. If something good happens to you, your partner should feel genuinely happy for you. That's what healthy love looks like. But toxic people often become jealous or resentful when you succeed. Maybe you get a promotion at work. Maybe you accomplish a personal goal. Maybe you improve financially. Maybe you receive recognition for something. Instead of supporting you, they become distant, irritated, or passive-aggressive. Sometimes they'll even minimize your success. You'll hear things like, "It's not that big of a deal. You just got lucky." Anyone could have done that. And honestly, this behavior usually comes from insecurity. Instead of viewing the relationship as a partnership, they start viewing it as a competition. That's extremely unhealthy. A loving partner should inspire you, encourage you, and celebrate your growth. They shouldn't secretly resent you for succeeding. And here's another important point. When someone constantly competes with you emotionally, eventually you stop sharing your wins with them. You begin hiding your happiness just to avoid conflict. That is not normal. In healthy relationships, both people should feel emotionally safe celebrating each other's success. 4. Excessive jealousy and envy. The fourth warning sign is excessive jealousy. Now let's be realistic. Jealousy itself is a normal human emotion. Almost everybody experiences insecurity at some point in relationships. But there's a massive difference between occasional insecurity and toxic jealousy. Toxic jealousy creates control, mistrust, emotional pressure, and constant arguments. For example, you mention a coworker's name in conversation and suddenly there's an emotional explosion. You go out with friends and they accuse you of something suspicious. They constantly check your phone. They monitor your social media. They question every interaction. That's not healthy. And over time, excessive jealousy destroys trust completely. A relationship without trust becomes emotionally exhausting. Now, obviously, if someone has betrayed trust before, insecurity may exist naturally. But toxic jealousy happens even when there's no valid reason for suspicion. And usually, excessive jealousy comes from deep insecurity. People who don't feel secure within themselves often become overly controlling because they fear abandonment or rejection. But instead of communicating those fears in a healthy way, they project them onto their partner. And eventually, the relationship starts feeling like emotional prison. Healthy relationships require trust. Without trust, there can never be peace. 5. Controlling behavior. The fifth warning sign is controlling behavior. And honestly, this is one of the most dangerous toxic traits because it usually gets worse over time. At first, controlling behavior can look subtle. Sometimes it's disguised as care, protection, or concern. But eventually, the controlling behavior becomes more obvious. They start telling you who you can talk to, who you can hang around, what you should wear, where you should go, how you should behave. They may constantly demand updates about your location. They may get angry when things don't go exactly their way. They may use guilt, manipulation, or emotional pressure to control situations. Now let's make something very clear. There's a huge difference between healthy boundaries and control. Healthy boundaries are about respect. Control is about power. Healthy boundaries sound like, "Oh, I value honesty. I need communication. I'm uncomfortable with disrespect." Controlling behavior sounds like, "You're not allowed to do this. You can't talk to them. You have to do exactly what I want." Those are completely different things. A relationship should never feel like someone is controlling your life. Love should create emotional freedom, not emotional imprisonment. And unfortunately, controlling behavior often becomes more intense with time. That's why it's important to recognize these signs early. 6. They use money as manipulation. The sixth warning sign is financial manipulation. Now, let's be honest. Money itself is not the issue. The real issue is when someone only values you for what you can provide financially. Some toxic individuals use money as a form of control, validation, or manipulation. For example, they only show affection when you buy them something. They expect expensive gifts immediately. They pressure you to spend beyond your limits. They constantly demand luxury treatment. And if you stop spending money, suddenly their interest disappears. That's a huge red flag. Real relationships are built on emotional connection, trust, loyalty, and mutual respect, not financial exploitation. And this issue becomes even more serious in long-term relationships or marriage. If two people agree on financial boundaries, budgets, or responsibilities, constantly violating those agreements creates major trust problems. Financial dishonesty destroys relationships. Healthy couples communicate openly about money. They respect each other's boundaries. They work together as a team. But toxic individuals often view relationships as opportunities for personal gain. And eventually, the relationship starts feeling transactional instead of emotional. Final thoughts. At the end of the day, toxic relationships rarely become toxic overnight. The unhealthy behaviors usually appear slowly. First, it's emotional games, then jealousy, then manipulation, then control. And before you realize it, your peace, confidence, emotional stability, and happiness begin disappearing. That's why recognizing these warning signs early is so important. Now again, this doesn't mean people can never change. A lot of toxic behaviors come from insecurity, emotional wounds, trauma, immaturity, or unresolved mental health struggles. But meaningful change requires self-awareness, accountability, and genuine effort. And no one should sacrifice their emotional well-being hoping another person will eventually change. Healthy relationships,